Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Lisa Branch. I am the operations manager for Connect Cause, and I am super excited to introduce to you today Engage, our new donor and volunteer management software. I know working in the industry the last 10 years or so, the struggles when it comes to managing your data and keeping everything in one place and really making that software work for you when it comes to communication with your constituents. So I'm really excited to introduce Cory. Cory is going to give us a quick walkthrough through the software and give us an opportunity to take a little bit of a dive into the volunteer campaign events and donor management portion of the software. With that, Cory, if you could just take it away for us.
Thanks, Lisa, for that introduction. It's great to actually have the opportunity to show Engage to everybody today. It's a product that we've been working on for a while, and we really felt that this was necessary, not because there's a glut of CRM systems out there in the market. There are tons of CRM systems that you can go out there and sign up for a free trial and start working with. But what we recognized at Connect Cause was that the nonprofit organizations that we deal with day in and day out through all of our services have very unique sets of needs. And the stuff that you have in a standard business is really focused around, getting customers and making deals and making sales. And that's just not the ethos that a nonprofit has. And therefore, the CRM system should reflect what nonprofits do. And that's really what we've tried to work on with Connect Cause Engage, is to have a system that's tailored and right out of the box meets the needs of those nonprofits. So there's really no better way to get used to the software and see what it does than to just dive in and take a look. So let's go over and take a look at the main login screen for Engage. What you'll do, very simple, just like any other application, you're going to enter your username and password. Here we've got an email address being what's used to log the person in. But the reality is there's a lot of flexibility, whether you want that to be email addresses or it could just be Jack, whatever you want it to be. All right. So let's go ahead and log in. When you first log into the system, one of the things that you're going to see is your Connect Cause Engage dashboard that you see sitting here. And there's a variety of information that you can put on your dashboard. Some of the things that I have on mine are event income summary, the top donors, our donor summary across time, as well as activities that we will have with our constituents or our donors or our board members. And as we work through the demo today, you'll see that that activities list is going to have items added to it. Now, one of the really nice things about Engage is that you have the capability to add and create your own new widgets for the dashboard. So really anything that can be created as a custom report in the application can also be added to your dashboard. So a very nice little feature. To orient you to what we have along the left-hand side of the screen, we have some of the quick actions that you can perform in the system. And along the top are all of the categorized features and functionality of the system. So searching, working with contacts, campaigns, contributions, events, mailing, reports, and volunteers. There's some really, really cool things that you can do with the application. So let's look at kind of what the central hub for all of this is, which is contacts. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to search for a contact here. There's many ways you can do that. If you look at the search screen, you'll see that you can go to find contacts. There's a search builder, an advanced search, a full text search. You've got a option over here where you can list all of your contacts in the system and then enter detailed search criteria. All of those are great if you need that kind of specificity. But the reality is I like to just use this great little search bar up here. By default, it's going to look against name and email, but you can also choose other things if you needed to focus it based on email only or phone numbers if you had that, or you're just looking for all the people in a particular city. I'm going to search for a person called Gerald Germain. And you'll see how quickly that pulled it up. With all of the people that we have in our database here, it very quickly found our friend Gerald Germain. I'm going to select his name, and it will take me right into his information. So you can see essentially the card that we have for Gerald. And we start with a summary view that allows us to see the key details about him. We'll talk about those here in just a moment. But we also see everything that's associated with Gerald. So any of his contributions, events that he might be signed up for or already participated in, activities that have taken place, relationships, groups that he may be a part of, notes, change logs, all of that functionality is directly associated with Gerald. And that makes it a good place for us to kick off anything that we're trying to do in the system, whether it might be adding a contribution, putting in an activity, signing him up for events. All of that can happen from one location. You'll see here on the summary tab that we have some key information about him. All of the information up at the top about his name and his employer, email addresses, home addresses, phone numbers, you name it, we've got it. And there's a number of different fields that the system has by default that we can use. But one of the things that's great about Engage is that we realize that not all people are the same. You know, your board members, you might want to have slightly different information than you want to have about your volunteers versus the information you might want to have about your staff or vendors or the people that you work with at sponsor organizations. So within Engage, you have the opportunity to put together custom sections for this screen, as well as custom fields so that you can collect exactly the kind of information that you want for each type of contact that you have. Let's go ahead and look at how we would work if we were going to add a new person in. So let's say, assume we have somebody who calls us. The person's name that we're going to be dealing with is Helen Hoffman. And Helen is calling to do some great things. She wants to get involved in our organization. She wants to give us a donation, which we always love. She wants to get involved in volunteering. She's just ready to go on that. So let's go ahead and start working with Helen. We need to add her as a contact. So we have a couple of different ways that we can add a contact. One of them is over here on the left-hand side in this bar, where we can choose add a contact. If we do that, we're going to have to select the contact type. What I like to do, though, is go up to the contacts menu, go to new individual, and then choose the type of contact that I'm working with. In this case, we're going to have a donor. And you'll see when I get into the screen that the donor option is already selected here for contact types. Now, a couple quick comments about contact type. You can have multiple contact types for a particular individual. So Helen, as we said, wants to be a donor. She also is going to be a volunteer eventually for us. We're not going to add that in right away, but there's the opportunity to have multiple types of roles associated with a particular individual. You'll also see when I showed you up here at the top, the types of for adding new contacts. We have three major categories of contacts. We've got individuals, we've got households, and we've got new organizations. The reality is most of the time that you're going to be working with individuals. And for individuals, you will have the capability within the system to either use the types of individuals that we have listed here, or you can get rid of those types of individuals. You can add your own. It all comes down to how your organization works and the type of people you want to track and the information about them that you want to track. Likewise, for organizations, you can have different things. So you might have a team that's going to be on a golf tournament. You have sponsors. You can track your suppliers. If you have partner organizations that you work with, you can have those in there as well. So lots of possibilities, and it's all under your control. You have the capability to change what information you're going to track about them. Back here to Helen now. So we know that Helen, we're going to say that we know she's married. This is Helen. We don't know her middle name, but we're going to call her Hoffman. And I happen to know that her current employer is Triangle Network Solutions. And it's good to get the employer if you have it, because that way, when you're doing fundraising, you have the opportunity to go to that employer and try to work with them to have them support your organizations and your campaigns. So I'm going to start by typing in Triangle. And you'll see there that automatically we already have Triangle Networking Solutions in our database. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to say that Helen is a network engineer. Her nickname is Helly. Go down and add an email address for her. So I'm going to say it's helen.hoffman@gmailo.com. And this is her home. We do want to allow her to receive bulk mailings. We will give her a phone number. We'll say it's 919-555-8523, no extension. That's her home phone, but we want to make it her mobile. So we have the option to choose that. Other phone locations would be things like a work phone or, all kinds of possibilities. You can track instant messaging, and you can have multiple of any of these things. So you can see that you can add multiple emails, you can add multiple phone numbers, multiple instant messengers, websites, all kinds of stuff. And if you happen to get this contact information from some other source, you can log that in here and potentially give a link to what that is. Now I'm going to go down for an address. I can obviously type in all of Helen's address information here, but I just happen to know, because Helen told me, that her husband is already in our database. So I can go here and I can say, use another contact's address. So I'm going to say this is Henry Hoffman. I'm going to select his name, and you'll see that it automatically pulls up 605 Chestnut Street in Durham. That's a great way to save typing when you're dealing with a lot of different people. Communication preferences. This is very nice when we get into bulk mailings. So we have the opportunity that we'll look at later to set up a mailing to a group of individuals. And the system has the capability to switch templates based on whether you choose that this person has a formal or a familiar communication style. You have the ability to change your greeting. So we could say, dear contact first name, but we also have prefix first name, last name. All kinds of things that you may use, you may not use, but the power is there if you want it. Also, I heard from Helen that she's very conscientious about her privacy. She doesn't want us to trade her information. And she doesn't like snail mail. It's just a waste of paper. So she would prefer that we didn't do that at all. She is good with email. So that is her preferred communication. And she's also into SMS. So she would be fine with having that. And we have the opportunity to say whether she should get HTML or text emails or both. We'll just go ahead and say both. Demographics here is actually a custom field that we could set up. So in this case, it just has gender. We have the ability to do birth date. Contact is deceased is a nice piece of information to have there, so that you don't continue to send mail to people in your database who have passed away. Constituent information. Here's another custom section that will say that, as I said earlier, environment is very important to Helen. We know that she is married, but I'm not going to, pry and find out when she married her husband, Henry. With those custom sections, as I said earlier, you have the opportunity to break down what kind of sections and information you gather based on the type of contact you have. That comes in very, very handy to avoid having people who are entering information into the system to have a ton of fields that they need to skip over because they don't apply. You can just make sure that everybody has the appropriate information when they need it. All right, let's go ahead and add Helen here. And once we do that, we can see some basic information about her. So you'll see all of her work information that we put in. You'll see the address. This is a privacy flag that says do not mail. Remember, when we entered her, we said that she was very conscientious about the environment. She doesn't like paper being wasted and sent out to her with mail. So that information is there. That can also be set up later on when you run reports about who you might be sending physical direct mail to. You'll see that the address belongs to Henry Hoffman. So that's kind of cool. And you have privacy information about do not mail, do not trade. All of that information is there. And if we needed to edit that, we can. We just go in and we say edit information. And we're going to change her title to Senior Network Engineer and save it up. So you can directly inline edit these things without having to go to a bunch of different locations. Now, take a look over here under relationships. We said that Helen works for Triangle Networking Solutions. You'll see that when we did that, it automatically added her as an employee of Triangle Networking Solutions. So you can keep a log in the systems of all kinds of relationships that you have with people. Let's go ahead and add another one. So we're going to say that the relationship type is spouse of. We know that she is married to Henry. So let's go ahead and add Henry Hoffman. I don't care about how long they've been married. Now, it'd be great if we had that because you could do all kinds of fun things with mailings on that and anniversary dates that if you wanted to send information out, but you don't have to. Let's go ahead and save that relationship up. And you'll see that now we have that Mrs. Helen Hoffman is the spouse of Henry Hoffman. You can also have inactive relationships. You can flag them in a particular way so you could keep a history of who somebody worked for in the past. But if they leave that job, you can either flag it as inactive, or if you have a relationship that has a set duration on it, after that time period passes, system can automatically mark it as inactive. Will you ever use that? Maybe not, but the power is there. Let's do a couple of additional things here for Helen. The first one that I want to do is add a contribution. She called in and she loves our organization and is all excited about donating to us. So I go over here to the contributions tab. You can see that I see contributions, recurring contributions, and it tells me I can click record contribution to put in something from this contact. I also have the ability to submit credit card information. Now, this is a piece of functionality that if you decide to use it, you're going to need to work with Connect Cause on it. We provide some services to allow you to get set up. But if you do want the opportunity to actually process credit card transactions through Connect Cause Engage, we can do that, but we're going to have to go in and work to set up your credit card processor information. It's a little bit of time. We've got to get the security information with you and work with you on that to do it. But even if you're going to take credit cards, say you got Square or something like that that you're using to swipe credit cards for everyday activities, or you're just taking checks, you can do that here as well. So I'm just going to go in and record contribution. I'm going to say that this is a campaign contribution for one of our campaigns. The total amount, she is going to be extremely generous to us today, and she's going to provide us with $5,000. Source would be as if you're working like with the company for a fund drive or something. Source can really be whatever you want, as it kind of says over here. This is an option. If I clicked on you'll see that I clicked on the question mark, and it tells me that's an optional identifier for the contribution source, a campaign name, event, mailer, so forth. All right, I am going to associate this with a campaign. You'll see that we have a couple of them in here. I am going to associate this with our spring fundraiser, which is currently in progress. This contribution status is completed. We're going to show the date that it's received. We have the capability to automatically email a receipt, and that uses a template that you can set up elsewhere in the system. And this is probably a good point to mention that there's all kinds of templates that you can set up. You can set up templates for mailings, for particular activities. If somebody said that they wanted to be a volunteer and you needed to send them an email about that, you can have a volunteer info template. You can have templates about specific types of events. And you can automatically email receipts out, and there can be templates for that. we're not going to send that. Let's say that we have somebody else who is responsible for sending the receipts out to people, and we like to do paper receipts. So we will have them then log that in the system when they send it out. Helen is doing this through a credit card transaction. And you'll see that I chose credit card offline. The reason I did that is because I'm not going to enter her credit card information right here. But if I have from Square or whatever system I'm using, or even my good old handy dandy credit card terminal that I swipe things through or enter the information, I can enter a transaction identifier if I want. Soft credit, this one's kind of interesting. Oftentimes, you'll want to obviously record this contribution for Helen, but you want to give, kind of some props to the people who might have referred her to you. And Helen, in this case, got referred by her husband. So I'm going to say, I want Henry to get some credit for this. I'm not going to give him credit for all of it, but let's say I'm going to give him, a $250 credit, and we'll call it household. Donor information, how long is? Well, she's been here for less than a year. Known areas of interest. You don't have to collect all this information if you don't want to, but if you do, it's there. So she is very environmentally conscious. We can choose additional details. There is the capability, another great feature of Engage. This is something you want to work with Connect Cause with if you wanted to use this functionality. But there's the ability to expose contribution pages for people. So Helen could go set up her own contribution page in the system that she can send the URL out to her friends and family, and they can go make contributions that will then get soft credited to her, as well as being credited to the person who made the donation. As I said, online contribution pages, that's something you really need to work with Connect Cause with, because there's a lot of security implications with that. So we want to make sure that you get that right. But a couple of other things here that are really important, particularly if you're giving things, gifts as a result of these. If you're a tax-deductible organization, there might be a non-deductible amount, or there might be fees in sending something out to people. You have the opportunity to put those elements in there. And again, as we talked about later, we can indicate when we sent out thank you gifts. And as a final option, if you so choose, you can provide premiums to people. So in this case, we have a coffee mug that we're going to send out to Helen. We can do that. We don't have to. And then if we do coffee mug, we can say that this is something that we give everybody who sends us over $500. One of the things that we can do here under premiums is we can say that we're going to give Helen a coffee mug. Now, we're not going to do that in this case, but the functionality is there. And if we were to choose it, it would automatically come in and tell us what things like the minimum contribution amounts were to receive these coffee mugs. Yeah, it can choose colors. All of that is completely customizable by you. You can have products that you put in. You can have options for the products. T-shirt colors, sizes, you name it, the option is there. And then you can ultimately track when you sent that out to her. All right, we've entered all of the information about this contribution, and let's just go back up to the top and do a quick review of the information that we have. Take a look at it. Everything seems to be looking good, so I am going to save that contribution. And voila, you'll see now that the contribution is automatically logged here. It shows her current year-to-date contributions, completed ones. Then you could have that as an in-progress contribution. If you ever need to, you can go view a little bit more information about it. You can go in, edit the details related to the payment information, all kinds of possibilities there. I do want to show you a couple quick things here, though. So first one is that if you'll recall back on our dashboard, we had a couple graphs here, and one of them has our top donors. I'm going to just refresh here, and you'll see that now Mrs. Helen Hoffman at $500,000 with one donation has now made it to the top of our tote board as one of our top donors. So that all information is all coming together here and allows you to see the current status of your fundraising as you go through and as things change. The capability is there in the system to indicate how frequently these different items should update. We usually try to keep them on a 15-minute basis, which is why I had to refresh there. All right, let's go back over, look at a couple other things with Helen. So I'm going to go and find Helen Hoffman once again. You'll see now that also I have an activity listed for Helen. Activities really try to capture a running list of everything that has happened with this particular individual. So you'll see that there was a contribution of $5,000 that was added to her. What are some other activities? Well, one of the activities is that I had a call with her. So I'm going to go up to the actions up here, could also go to new activity, but actions is available from everywhere. And I'm going to say, I had a phone call with her. So you'll notice that it gets my logged in user there, Jack O'Neill. It has Helen Hoffman as the contact. And you know what I want to do? This is kind of an important person because you know she did just donate that $5,000 to us. I want to let Lisa know about that. So I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to assign this to Lisa. And you'll notice that she'll get a copy of this activity in her email. We can assign it to multiple people. So I could also assign it to Rebecca. She can get a copy of that. Subject is new donor excited to work with us. I'm not going to assign this specifically to a campaign because it doesn't really matter in that, but I know that she is really excited, so I'm going to put her engagement index at 5. Location isn't really relevant here. I talked to her. She was super excited. I talked to her for 20 minutes. This activity was completed. I finished the phone call. I could enter a bunch of information and I can format it with all kinds of information there. And I have the ability to add attachments. I can say that activities can be repeated. This is nice if you're logging that you had a check-in with somebody. You have the ability, just like you would in your standard email product, to say that you want to add this activity over and over again. And the cool thing about that is that then appears on the task list of the people that you assigned up at the top. There's also the ability to schedule a follow-up. So I can say that just for good measure, so Lisa really gets the point of it, I want to make sure that she does a phone call, and I'm not going to necessarily apply a date to it. Actually, I am, because there's something I want to show you back on the dashboard. So I want to say next Monday, I want her to call and welcome Helen. And I'm going to assign that to Lisa. All right, so I save that. Now, once the information saves and we come back in, we see our original activity that we had with our contribution, but we also have the completed phone call that we had with Helen, the one that I took. And then you can also see that there's a call and welcome Helen that's assigned to Lisa that's scheduled for February 22nd. Let's go back and hit our dashboard because I mentioned earlier that activities would show up. Now, as I go back to my dashboard and look here on the activities, you can see that I've got a phone call and welcome Helen, that has been assigned to Lisa on this date. So that can kind of act as a to-do list. And as you can see up here at the top, there's the ability to filter by activity types and things like that. So great ways to keep the process moving and to make sure that you can not only log everything that happened with your contacts, but also to set up future activities that need to take place, send email notifications out to people about them, and put things on their dashboards to let them know that that certain activities are required of them on particular dates. All right, let's go back in one more time to Helen. All right. So now what I'm going to do, we've already got her summary. We've added a contribution for her. We've taken care of a couple of activities for her. We've got relationships to both her employer and her spouse. At this point, I can add an event for Helen. So I want to register up for a particular event that we have. And that's going to be our fall fundraiser dinner. So we're going to set her up with that. And we're going to say that this is the campaign. We'll put it with the John Doe matching campaign. Her participant role is going to be an attendee. Now, there's also opportunities, and this is another one of the lists that you can manage as an organization all on your own. You can say that she's going to be, in this case, an attendee or a volunteer or a host or a speaker. You could have organizer. It's all up to you what kind of information you want to include in these items. We're putting in her registration date, participant source, during. We're going to have a couple. We're going to make it a couple because she and Henry are both going to come. Receipt can come from me, or there's the opportunity to like the fundraising department wouldn't be another opportunity. And we can put in a confirmation. Thanks, Helen. And even here under food preferences, this is a custom section so that you can set up on a particular event, for a soccer tournament. Food preferences might not be too critical, although you might want to have, somebody needs gluten-free stuff. But you could have food preference here that she and Henry are going to want the salmon stew. Point being that you can have custom sections that are very specific to each type of event, so you can gather the registration details that you need for that type of event. If you're dealing with a golf tournament, it's entirely possible. We might want to collect what their handicap is, or what they normally shoot at the Thunderbird Country Club on 18 holes of golf, so we can pair them up properly. Let's go ahead and save this. And our event has been saved. So now we have Helen signed up for our event. Lots of really great information that we've entered about Helen off of that one single phone call. And the point that I really want to make here with this is that all of the things that you can do in the system, you never really even have to leave that contacts dashboard to do them. Everything is right there. Okay, well, that is a lot of information we've gone through so far, and that's just with working with a donor. Now, realistically, everything we talked about with donors like Helen would apply for other groups we might have, like our board members, our volunteers, supplier contacts, sponsor contacts, partner contacts. Don't forget, as I mentioned earlier, you have that capability to always specify the exact type of information you want to gather for each type of contact. What I'm going to do now is go through and we're going to look a little bit at volunteers, because, donors get you the money to keep going, but volunteers are often the lifeblood of the organization, and make sure that you can do the day-to-day activities that keep the organization running. So I think a key point that I want to point out here is that there are multiple ways that you can do volunteer management in Connect, Cause, Engage. I'll start with a simple version, and then I'll move into a more detailed version that is part of the complete volunteer management module. And in reality, that volunteer management module is so detailed and has so much power to it. We're probably not going to be able to get through the entire thing in this introductory demo. It could have a demo of all of its own. But let's start and go back to Helen for a second here. So I'm going to find Helen and go back to her information. You'll recall I said earlier that one of the types of individuals we can create is a new volunteer. I could do that and it would bring up a blank screen here. But with Helen, we know that she's really interested in being a volunteer in addition to her contributions that she's making as a donor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in here and I'm going to say edit and go over to contact type. And I'm going to select that Helen is also a volunteer. If we had specialty sections for volunteers, those specialty sections would also appear for Helen. So as you add on different types of roles that somebody may have within your system, you will get the cumulative results of that in terms of the information that you collect about them. So now we've made sure that Helen is a volunteer. We can collect separate information about her. We want to now log that she did some volunteer time. So I'm going to go up here to actions and I'm going to choose volunteer. And I can say that I am going to let Lisa know. And we can then enter that information so we know that in terms of minutes, that was 180 minutes. That activity was completed. I can enter information and I can just go ahead and save things out on that. So we now, it saved our information about the activity with Helen. We know that she spent 3 hours filing for us. That can also be reported on. So we can go in and run a report later on of volunteer activities and have it categorized by different volunteer and the kind of things that they did. And Helen is such a great volunteer for us that we want to give her a volunteer commendation. So we have the ability, it all generally uses the same type of activity, it all generally uses the same activity screen, but you have the capability, once again, for different types of activities to specify custom fields and custom sections. So granted, we could put in here the details about it. We could have an entirely new section that would be a testimonial section that would be a comment from her supervisor. And then you'll see down here, there is a custom section for volunteer commendation that we can put in what project ID. There could also be in that commendation a series of check boxes that we could say that she was a team player. She was always on time and early. Lots of capabilities to do. So that's a very simple way of managing volunteers. We can keep track of who our volunteers are by tagging them in that role. We can add activities that allow us to keep track of what work they've done for us and how long they've spent. And then we can go back later on and we can report on that information as well.
Great. Thank you for that, Cory. Can you tell me, for someone who is watching the video right now that may be a volunteer coordinator and they want to drill down a little bit into the volunteer portion of the software, if I wanted to, let's say, create an event and tie that back into one of my matching campaigns or other campaigns I have going on for the year, can you kind of show me how I would do that?
Sure. And that really is over here under the volunteers section of it. You can see that if we want to manage this, where we really start off with is something called a new volunteer project. We'll look at that in just a second. I'll show you how you set up that. But where this gets a little bit more complicated, and probably for what you're looking at would be exactly the kind of things that you want to do, you can configure different roles on the project. You can configure project relationships, volunteer settings. There's the ability to expose a volunteer interest form externally so that people can just come to your website and look at that. And then people can search for volunteer opportunities. So let me just kind of go over and I'll start over here with the new volunteer project. And Lisa, is this the kind of information that you'd want to set up?
Absolutely. Sometimes we may, as volunteer coordinators, want to create a volunteer project that's going to help us raise funds for a specific campaign.
So Lisa, here we have our volunteer manager screen where we start with a project. So what would be a good project that you would want to set up as a volunteer coordinator for people?
Well, Cory, we have a fundraiser coming up, and someone has donated the space to us, and we really want to make sure we have it cleaned up good before we have our fundraiser. So I need to create a project where volunteers can come in and clean up that building before our event.
Okay, so this is, which event is this for? Your
This is
spring
going to be for
fundraiser?
our spring fundraiser.
Okay. So Lisa, does that look like a good explanation to start with?
That looks great.
Yeah, and if you always ever need to, you can always go back in, because if you were to post this out onto the web to allow your volunteers to sign up, this is the description that they would see. So you could put in any information you wanted in detail about qualifications, all kinds of content like that. All right, campaign wise, this is the spring fundraiser. And location. Now we need to create a new location for this. This is going to be held at the gym down at the local charter school, right?
That's correct.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4 Main Street. And we'll just leave the rest of that blank. This is an active project. I'm going to say that the owner of this project, Lisa, we really want this to be you. And beneficiary is going to be our Engage CRM demo. Now you could change that if you wanted to any particular organization, but we'll just keep that set up here. So we also can say that we want to have this be a volunteer sign up. There's different, as I mentioned earlier, different templates that we can use for this, for the kind of form we want to use. We can use this for either an individual registration or a group registration, or both. This is nice if you have a company who might be sending over 5 people. You could set up a form that would allow them to enumerate all 5 of those people on a single form. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to say continue here. All right, great, Lisa. Well, we now have added our project. We have to actually say what kind of volunteers we need. So from our options here, who do you think, what do we want to start with first?
We're definitely going to need some trash pickup.
Okay. And how many people do we need for that?
2.
All right, 2 for trash pickup. Schedule type, do we want that to be, now do you have a set shift you want, or is that going to be something that can be, open-ended, that they can do it at any point before the event?
We can do that open-ended. They can come anytime.
Okay. And over here, we have the options that indicate whether or not this should be public. And what that essentially means is if it's public, that means that we can see it out on the website when we publish this volunteer opportunity. Any other volunteer opportunities we need?
I think the last one, just general cleanup, nothing specific.
Okay. And maybe 3 for that, since we said we needed 5.
That's correct.
And we'll give it a shift. We're going to probably need that after the event. That'll be next Saturday, and the event's going to probably end at probably 11 p.m. So we'll set that, and we're going to need people for 90 minutes afterwards. All right, and we'll also say we want to allow users to sign up without specifying a shift. So
I think those 2 are fine.
All right, for that project, we have now defined our volunteer opportunities. Next step, we're going to assign some volunteers. So you'll see here is a great screen that shows us what kind of things we need. I am going to say, we know our friend Helen really wants to be involved in it. So with Helen, we are going to put her on, she's really excited. We're going to put her on both trash pickup, and we're going to put Helen on cleanup at the end. So move to cleanup. So Helen's great on this. We have our contact information. As we get some more people, we can do things with them. Helen doesn't want to be lonely. So we're going to have Henry be involved in this as well. He's going to help her with the trash pickup, and he'll also help her with cleanup because he is a loving husband who is very supportive. All right, so we need just one more volunteer. I am going to have my friend Gerald Germain be involved in this, and Gerald's going to fill out our final slot on cleanup. All right, so everybody's there. We can finish that out. All right, so we've got our volunteers assigned. Now we want to review that. So let's go ahead and say we're going to view our volunteer roster. We can go in here and we can see who's involved in all of these different roles. There's the capability to email them. We can call them. We can SMS them. Now, email is pretty straightforward to set up in the system. SMS is one of those things that if you want to use that functionality directly from within Connect Cause Engage, it is supported, but you'll need to work with our support team to be able to set that up. There's a third-party service called Twilio that you have to use to set that up, and that is a paid service for doing it. Now, granted, it's portions of a penny per SMS, so it's not expensive, but it does need to be configured on the technical side. So that's available there as well. All right, going back to our project here. Let's go ahead and say that now our event has taken place. We can log the volunteer hours. So Helen Hoffman, all right, now we'll assume that our event has finished. It was a rousing success, and we need to log some hours for the people who participated. So Helen spent about 60 minutes on the initial tracks pickup, 180 hours on cleanup afterwards. Same with Henry, her beloved husband. And with Gerald, we indicate that he was there for 60 minutes. And now we'll just set all of these as completed. And you'll notice that there's other options there if there were necessary, that you could choose that somebody canceled, that they were unreachable. You didn't actually need all of that help or that they were a no-show. But fortunately for us, all of our people were involved. And now all of our information is saved and logged for our volunteer activities, and we can then go in and report on it later. So Lisa, is that the kind of thing that you as a volunteer coordinator would find useful?
I would find that very helpful.
As we can see, volunteer management is certainly very powerful in Engage. And there's, as I mentioned earlier, a couple of different ways we can do it. We can go from the very simple to the full tracking of hours like we just looked at here. Now, to kind of close up, I wanted to go over how we see the data that's in the system, because we focused a lot on getting things into the system thus far, but we haven't really looked, other than the dashboard, at how we can view the information that we've entered. Each of the different sections has a variety of different dashboards and reports associated with it. So for instance, if I go to contributions, I can view a contribution dashboard that allows me to see all of my recent contributions. I can do things like filtering, lots of fun capabilities there. I can view things in tables rather than in charts. And there's always the capability to add new dashboards and new reports. Then we have, if we want to look at actual reports that you can go in and print out, you'll see under contribution reports, look at all of those different contribution type reports. We can have summaries, distribution details, lots of very important reports that you can also add to by creating your own. You can see here, right down here at the bottom, it has a new contribution report option.
This is great, Cory. I see you have live bunts and side bunts reports. Those are really important reports to generate.
Yeah, maybe you can explain to our audience what those represent and why they're useful.
They're really useful during campaigns. For example, if you have a matching campaign that has some restrictions on what they consider to be an eligible donation. Side bunt essentially is a some year but not this year report. So maybe you need to engage past donors as a part of the campaign. And you want to know who's donated in the past but didn't donate last year. This report will be helpful. for that?
We have reports for everything in the application. So we have contact reports, contribution reports, event reports, pledge reports, mail reports, and campaign reports, all kinds of different things that we can do. And there's always the capability to add your own reports based on one of these templates. So if you don't like exactly the way one of the reports that's in the system already is set up, you can use it as a baseline, but then you can change your fields around, modify them, add things, subtract things until it's just the way you want it. All right, well, Lisa, we are coming up on our allotted time. There's so much to talk about in Connect, Cause, Engage that it's hard to keep a demo to a short period of time. But I think the things that we've looked at thus far are very valuable and very critical elements to any CRM system. So we talked about contacts. We talked about assigning our contacts and other things like contributions and events to campaigns. We went through how to manage contributions, how to collect them, how to look at the details about them. Events, mailings is another section. You can set up bulk mailings in the application. We didn't have a chance to look at that, but maybe we can do an additional demo on that in the future. And then obviously volunteers, a major strength in the application. I think the thing that I would like to leave our viewers with here is a point that I talked about right up front, that Engage, yes, it has all of the functionality that you would find in any CRM system on the market. But what we've really tried to do with Engage is to make it targeted at the needs of our nonprofit customers. And hopefully that it does that. Lisa, as somebody who's been involved in the nonprofit world for years, what's your take on it?
Well, I'm really excited, Cory, to see how you've been able to incorporate donors, campaigns, events, volunteers, and a really detailed reporting system for Engage. So that's, I think, what really excites me about this is we can manage multiple constituents in this software.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's all we have for today. Definitely, there's more to come on this and more that we can show. So stay tuned, everybody, for upcoming demos on this. But hopefully, this gives you enough basic information to get an idea of what Connect, Cause, Engage can do for you. Lisa, any final comments from you?
No, I just want to say thank you, Cory, for taking the time to show us this great new software.
You're very welcome.
Thank you guys for joining us. Remember, if you have any additional questions, concerns, or you want to know more about the software, feel free to reach out to us at 844-526-6632.